Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Pop Culture Squadcast. We are live tonight on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm also on my Twitter if anybody wants to go find that. We are going to be having special guests tonight. We're going to be bringing in Thom Zahler, who has been a guest for us before. We are going to talk about some capes, some arrows, some spaceships, hopefully. But we're looking forward to it. Tom's always great to have on the show, and I'm gonna, not spend any time and bring him in right now.
Hey,
welcome, Thom. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. I am happy to have you here. It was, I think I was looking at it. I think it was like either a week later or a week earlier last year where we did this, and we were talking about something you were kickstarting, and let us also know that we are talking about kickstarting season 2 of Cupid's Arrows. Was that last year at this time too? Cupid's Arrows season 1.
Last year would have been Love and Capes in the time of COVID.
Oh, it was the time of COVID. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, Cupid's Arrows season 2 is on Kickstarter right now. Mm-hmm. It is live. You are funded, which is fantastic. Yes. Mm-hmm. There's 7 days to go. And in the comment section, if anybody's watching, there are links to the Kickstarter, so you can go and grab that. We will allow you to go now and do that, back it, and you can come back, and we'll still be here. We're gonna be here for a while. Mm-hmm. But so tell us about this Kickstarter. What is in volume 2 of Cupid's Arrows?
So
I'm gonna pause you one thing. Anybody who did back volume 1 of Cupid's Arrows, what a great book! What a fantastic piece of something to put on your bookshelf. The hardcover is just stunning, and I don't know if you have more of those, if people are available for them, but it's great. I mean, the story is fantastic. It goes without saying, but the edition that came out with Kickstarter last time was great. So what's in volume 2? Sorry.
So volume 2 collects the second season from Webtoon. Okay. It's in collaboration with Rocket Ship, who's my publisher on it. They make exquisitely beautiful releases. Like the hardback of Cupid's Arrows Volume 1 is just crazy awesome. I can't say enough good things about it. So we're doing volume 2. We're going to do essentially the same stuff, but there's going to be a couple extra stories. We've already distributed those reward levels, but you can have your story told by the Cupids. So we did that last year where a couple people told their love story and I turned it into a Cupid's Arrows chapter. We'll be doing that again. So there'll be 2 more of that. There's also, you can get the first volume if you missed out on it. And assuming that this goes well, and so far we're like 400% funded. So far it's going pretty well. This will allow us to do seasons 3 and 4.
Well, now where are you going to do that? So I know that we're not on Webtoons for season 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. What do you have any ideas on how you want to do that? You want to do that? Do you think about doing that through a Kickstarter or?
So they'll be original through Rocket Ship. So it'll probably be a Kickstarter to do 3 and 4. But there's more moving around that has to happen to have an original happen. With this, I have to convert everything. If doing an original, I have to do an entire year's worth of work. So,
okay, that's a very different situation, but very exciting. It's for those people who haven't read the volume 2 on Webtoon. It is it definitely moves. The volume 1 is a great setup. It's fun. It's exciting. It's a good story. But volume 2, season 2, just definitely raises the stakes, and it leaves us with a bit of a wanting more.
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't know that Webtoon was going to cancel me when I wrote season 2.
Okay.
So, and when I found out I couldn't change it because everything was in motion.
Sure.
Like I would have. The completist in me, the one who lived through watching so many TV shows on Fox, doesn't like people like that. But on the other hand, I couldn't truncate it that much. Right. So I just had to aim where I was aiming and hope that there'd be some way to keep going somewhere else.
Well, that's great. That's good to hear. So what is I kind of hinted at it a little bit, but what are the what are the pieces in terms of? Well, let's dive into Cupid's Arrows just a little bit. Like the concept for people who don't know about Cupid's Arrows is that, and I'll give my idea, is that Cupid is real, and Cupid is very busy and has a lot of people to make sure they fall in love, and has like 2-man hit squads to make sure people fall in love. Like you've kind of said something like that before. So we follow this one pair of Cupids, and and their adventures and the people that they have to come across and the ways they have to go about it, which is very interesting because essentially there's this task presented to these two people, and you present them with obstacles, and they're all new and different and intriguing in ways that people have to solve these problems. And at the same time, there's a slight thread that gets a little bit thicker in season 2 that starts to weave through.
Mm-hmm.
But where did you get the idea for this?
Oh, I stole from lots of places.
Sure.
So after doing Warning Label, which was the series I did before that, Warning Label had a hard ending. Like there was only so long I could emotionally abuse the main character before it had to end. So I wanted something that's much more open-ended. So it's based, like, thematically, it's like every 80s TV show, which has a structure of they go on missions.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was inspired by the Rob Thomas show Cupid.
Mm-hmm.
Originally with Jeremy Piven. There was a new version with Bobby Cannavale, where it was about him getting couples together.
Right.
The other big inspiration was the Thin Man movies.
Right.
Because I wanted to write about a bantery couple. And I wanted characters that you could follow that kind of quantum leap into situations, but they're also like you follow their story as much as you're following the smaller stories. So there's a large overarching plot, but there's also individual stories that keep going, kind of, like Supernatural or any show like that, where there's a big arc and there's lots of little arcs along the way.
Right. And that definitely, you were successful. I mean, that is definitely what you get from reading the story and the episodes that go through it. There's a thread in the things that you write, whether it's Loving Capes or Cupid's Arrows or Warning Label or Long Distance. There is you have often, and it's really only Time and Vine that doesn't have that romantic coupling banter, but you do it well. This really takes it to the next level because it's not a couple, it's two people that are talking to each other and work partners, but it's not the same type of work partners that we got in Time and Vine, right?
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah. It's not a mentor-mentee relationship, which you kind of get in Time and Vine.
Right.
They get clever, but like I don't want to be Sorkin all the time. I mean, internally, yes, I want to be Aaron Sorkin all the time.
Sure.
I want to sound like an Aaron Sorkin character, but there are lots of times where the banter isn't right. Like that's not how people would talk. So Cupid's Arrows is a situation where I get to write them talking like that a lot, which I super enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Time and Vine doesn't quite have that. There's humor, but there's not the same type of humor.
Right.
With Cupid's Arrows, it's work buddies.
Yeah.
There's a description about Pirates of the Caribbean that Jeffrey Rush and Johnny Depp are in their own movie, and everybody else is just following along. Like they come from another movie into this movie and disrupt everything. And that's how I think of Rick and Laura. Like they've got their own story. They're playing their own game, and everybody else is just swept along with it.
That's fair. That's good.
Yeah, it's like 2-track programming.
So what are the rewards available for this? I know that there's a bunch of them. I'm kind of trying to look at them and trying to get them so there we can see them easily. But what are the type of rewards that we're looking at?
They're softcover and hardcover versions of the book. You can get volume 1 if you missed out on that. If you're a terrible person and didn't back the first one. You can get Warning Label. You can get the long con. There are bookmarks and prints. This year, we're doing a set of 6 pins with 6 of the main characters. from the book. So Rick and Laura and Cupid and Tizzy the Fury and Phineas and Casey. So it's the first time we've done a big set of pins of multiple characters.
I want to bring in something else though. So this is also is this part of the
yeah, there's a level where you can get all the rewards that were available for volume 1.
Okay, is that where this is?
Yeah,
this is if anybody hasn't seen this, doesn't have this fun, like somebody needs to pester Tom in the way so that this is available everywhere he goes for purchase so like everybody should have this. This is one of the coolest things. I'm not saying the best thing, you've done a lot of great things. This is one of the coolest things you've ever done. For those who don't know, like all of the characters from all of his original stuff are in here, or at least the last 8 years worth of original stuff. And it's just really cute. I love it.
Thank you.
I need a very big version of it so I can put it on the wall.
It was a lot of people to do. It's weird because I changed my drawing style just a little bit. I changed it a lot between Love and Capes and everything else. So it's weird getting them to all work together. And I liked really trying to figure out the body language, because essentially it's Rick and Laura being exhausted after getting all those characters together.
Yeah, it's totally awesome.
They're in the winery from Time and Vine.
Yeah. I'm still looking at it. One of the things we're gonna come back to the Kickstarter, but I want to talk about process, because you know me and I like to talk about stuff like that. So I was recently looking through your Patreon, and early on, especially earlier in the year, you had posted some old Love and Cape stuff, and you've changed. Your style has changed a lot from early Love and Capes till now. What do you think of that? Like, how do you when you look back at what you did then, what do you think about it as compared to what you're doing now? Like, do you do that?
It hurts to look at
it. Okay.
There's a lot.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt the reader.
It's something I keep in mind, that if you look at Peanuts or Garfield or Bloom County, like, you can see the artist figuring out how to draw the characters and how to make them work. Like, Opus doesn't look like Opus did in the first one.
Right.
Kind of the same way, like, I give myself the grace that goes along with that. Nobody has ever come up to me and said, your characters don't look like your characters used to. Like, because it happens so gradually.
That's true.
Like that great shot from New Teen Titans of how Raven changed over the years.
One of the greatest shots ever.
Yeah, because it happens so gradually, people don't notice it and they kind of accept it because they're reading at that pace, and it just moves along with them. I think the body language gets a lot better. The character designs get a lot better. They start working together a little better. It became both a little less cartoony and a little less designy. So I did a lot of stuff things were meant to be graphic, so they were flat, that I've gotten away from. And also, like, the proportions between the characters were a little more exaggerated. So, like, if you look at especially in like the first volume, if you look at Mark's hands compared to Abby's hands, like, they're not part of the same toy line. And it was always the thing when you saw them drinking glasses, they would always drink these really thin glasses, because that was the only way I could make it look right in both their hands, but that they could both hold it. Because with it being that distorted, like, the kind of stuff that Mark would use is not the kind of stuff that Abby would use, and that they just couldn't. I wanted them to be able to participate in the same world. So
now they are part of the same toy line. Would you say that? Is it easier for you? Like, are you noticing that it's easier because of the synergies and the similarity to the character designs? is that something you do? Because a lot of times people will say, well, it's easier just because I've done it before and I'm faster at it because, you know, just muscle memory type of thing. Do you think that the actual design changes that you sometimes maybe consciously and sometimes subconsciously made makes it you know, a different experience in terms of your speed and creation?
Some of it was subtle changes over a while, just figuring out how they fit together. Like drawing them kissing is always hard because one of them is going to be obscured, and usually you want to see them both. It's one of the reasons the characters don't kiss a lot in the book, because it kind of robs people of a moment if you do it wrong. But just like figuring out size wise how they relate to each other,
Sure,
and making their proportions a little more standard between the two of them makes it easier to like have them holding hands or sitting on the couch together and not be so radically different like Bob and Helen in The Incredibles, where it works in that universe because everybody looks like that. But, you know, Edna Mode can't effectively function in that world because she's, you know, 2.5 feet tall compared to Bob. Like the two can't work in the same building.
Right.
So it's just kind of that to get more common. I still catch myself like I relate sizes to me. I mean, I think everybody does.
Sure.
But if you notice, especially in the beginning of the books, the doors are roughly one head taller than the character that's walking in them. And if you follow that logic, Mark would be hitting his head on any door that Abby has walked through. Like it's
right.
Because I'm just drawing, oh, there's this much room above somebody's head when they come through the door. You forget that Abby's like 5'4".
That's not the same for me.
Yeah.
You got to add another head. Which is why when we take pictures, we're sitting.
It's why in any picture, I'm not the one going, oh, I'll be in front.
I want to talk. I want to get to more to Loving Capes, and I want to come back to that. But let's talk a little bit more about Cupid's arrow. So, as you encounter a particular episode, what is the process for you in terms of creating that? Like each episode, there's two people who need to fall in love, right? Not talking about the overarching story that's we want more of, but how do you embark on these are the two characters that I want to that are going to have to be made to fall in love, or however what's going to happen, and then setting up the obstacles that have to come into play and what makes it different. Do you start with the setting, or how many different ways have you done it? Like, do you say I want to do it there, or hey, let's do it in a Comic-Con where I have to draw a whole bunch of people?
That one I didn't think through totally. No. And opening up to people who meet at Dragon Con, that was even worse. Because I have like generic background characters I can sometimes reuse, but Dragon Con characters do not look like any other people in the best way possible. So it comes down to when I'm trying to figure out what relationship is going to happen, it's either what's bothering me, what do I think is interesting, or what haven't I done?
Okay.
So with Webtoon, the rule of thumb that was given to me was you do 3 chapters to start. The first one explains the general premise. The second one advances. The third one is a cliffhanger. Okay. And the cliffhanger I came up with for the first one is that one of the people they're getting together is already in a relationship. Except that can't be, because I don't want the Cupids to be breaking characters up. So I had to come up with a reason why that would work. And, you know, it's volume 1. You find out that the girl in college is faking having a boyfriend so that people leave her alone so she can study. So from that, it was kind of like, what opposites could you put together? Somebody who's kind of lost and doesn't know what they want to do meet someone who's really driven and knows exactly what she's going to do. And it's just been, you know, like, oh, what would it be like if an actor fell in love with one of the people at a convention, which was the next one? Or people in a play that wind up figuring out that they're actually better relate. You know, it's kind of like the friends become lovers story. Right. And then the very last one, because I'd established so much stuff and it was interesting reading the comments, I obscured it and I didn't say what couple was getting together. So that became much more like, pieces on a chessboard, which I literally showed in the comic. So in the second one, I wanted to do a couple that was already together that they had to rekindle, because I think that's the thing that happens. I did my first same-sex couple, because it's dicey, because you want to have representation, but you also want to be respectful about tapping into somebody else's story.
Sure.
I tend to go with universal concepts. So it's like you're trying to show something for everyone, but you're also trying to make sure that you're not just doing it to do it. And that was a nice story about betrayal and people trying to get over it.
Yeah, no, it was a great story. I totally enjoyed it, and the fact that the couples were same sex was ancillary to the story that was being told. That's what I think you did well about it.
Yeah, with a lot of that, like I want the story to be the story. Like it shouldn't. I don't want the story to be about the factors that make up the people. I want the story to be about universal constants that everybody can relate to. So even if you don't relate directly to the characters, you can relate to, oh, this is a character who's been betrayed by somebody they used to go out with, and now it's going to take a lot for them to decide to be in a relationship with somebody else. I mean, that's something everybody can relate to. So it's finding those kind of constants. Or, oh, what if somebody in the relationship had a serious disease? Or what if, what could I do that to make things complicated?
And that's one of the things that kind of I was getting at, and I'm glad you met me there with, was that the stories that you're telling, the relationships that need to happen are the relationships that we all want to happen. They are the good things. And what's one of the benefits of the book, one of the things that's really important is that the stories that you're telling in Cupid's Arrows are generically good stories, and I'm using a very generic word there, but they're wholesome without it being corny. They are stories about people finding each other, people dealing with their own independence and their own uniqueness, and finding someone else whose uniqueness works with them. And they can go many ways, and that's one of the real hallmarks of what makes Cupid's Arrows, so good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's finding the universal truth that everybody can latch onto. Like you don't have to identify with what's going on completely. It's that you need to see the thing that you can relate to. Like, oh, that's an interesting thing to explore. Let's see where that goes.
That's great. I want to move just a little bit, and let's talk about your Patreon, which is there you go. It's Patreon's right there. Yep. There's no space there. Where this one's better. The comments on Facebook are better than YouTube.
Okay.
But so your Patreon, what are you doing there? In general and specifically, like there's Love and Capes there for anybody who's interested and who hasn't been there. But what are you using the Patreon for right now?
So during the pandemic, I went a little nuts, like everybody. And part of my therapy was essentially I just decided to start doing Love and Capes, and I wanted to do them going through the pandemic. And to borrow another Sorkin, it was initially in my head, it was like the episode of West Wing after 9/11. Where it was technically out of continuity. But the more I wrote it, the more I realized it would fit in continuity. So it's officially part of continuity. So some of it was just things I was doing to get through it, but it was also allowing me to post it on a 1 page a week schedule. So that's 8 panels a week, roughly speaking, that's 2 jokes. And it allowed me to create the pages and kind of be subsidized to create the pages to put together another book, which was Love and Capes in the Time of COVID. And then I've come back with
Ringo Award nominated Love and Capes in the Time of COVID.
Ringo Award, yes, by Ringo nominated Best Cartoonist, which is insane.
Not so insane, but
yeah, I am very grateful and humbled by that one. so yeah, decided to do the follow-up Home for the Holidays, which jumps ahead a few months, and characters a little older, and it's Christmas time. So it allows me to, when I did Love and Capes previously, what I would do is I would section it up and I'd post it on my website 2 or 3 times a week. So this allows me to get back to that and serialize it so that there's a stream for people to see, but also to create the content that will eventually become the book that I kickstart to sell. That's just kind of the business model right now.
Right. Well, it's great. People who are supporting you are getting, not just the, advanced look at this work, but also, behind the scenes stuff is pretty cool that you post as well.
At the base level for like $1 a month, you can get just the comics. A couple levels up, you can see behind the scenes stuff. I'll show the process pages and go a little more in depth about jokes that I did. When it's not so much con season, I will also post sketches of the month on a theme. And then
it's been a long con season.
Yes, it has. I'm glad to have them back.
Yep.
But it's kept me from doing some stuff. It's good to be working. And at certain reward levels, you get the book for free when it gets kickstarted, and you get a commission.
Yeah, cool. That's very cool stuff. Like, one of the things that I find very interesting about the way that you do create your art, and this is another process thing. Like we've talked about this in the past, how because you do everything digitally, and you pencil digitally and you color your own stuff and you letter your own stuff, you're able to reuse some art, especially for backgrounds and particular scenes. You don't have to draw the whole thing every single panel. But that being said, and I don't know if I'm going to bring it out, but maybe I'll see if I can find it a little bit. But like some of the things, like in the more recent, and just looking at the Home for the Holidays, Love and Capes, there's like a scene where Darkblade is in a study, and I think he's talking to his stepmother, and the wallpaper is this gold leaf flowery thing or something like that. But as you go from panel to panel, the camera shifts and the wallpaper moves. Like that is so important to the fact that the camera is shifting. You can't say that, like, it can't stay the same way and then moves. Like there's such a richness to the way that or the thought that you put into making the reader feel a part of what is going on. I think it's intentional. Am I right about that?
I can't remember it, but I'm sure it is, because I will only like directly copy the background if it's one of those like identical panels.
Sure.
Otherwise, because you're zooming in and out and the background needs to move along with it. Even if I'm reusing a background, it still has to be a little bit different. Just visually, so the pages aren't monotonous, but panels aren't monotonous, but also because you're getting closer up, you're getting farther away. Working digitally, that's been one of the things that I've been able to deal with is like line weights, because when the first 4 volumes of Love and Capes are all drawn by hand, scanned, but that meant that when I drew a background, if I made the line too thick, it just got thicker if I zoomed in, and I can do things to change that now. I want that, and I keep trying to redraw environments and tweak them and make them better and make them more useful. Like the first time I drew a set of stairs, I drew the banister on it, and then I realized if I drew that on a separate layer, then I could put a character on a banister and put the character on the stairs and put the banister in front of him, and that made a world of difference. It's the analogy I use is it's like animation, where you're painting backgrounds and putting characters in the foreground. The book is pretty dialogue heavy, so ideally, like, you're not looking at the background. Like, if the thing you're taking away from the panel is, what books are on the shelf or whatever, I'm doing my job wrong, because you should be focusing on the dialogue and what people are saying and what people are doing. But I want it to hold up to a little bit of scrutiny on top of that.
Right. I'm not saying that the first thing that grabbed my attention was the background.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah.
let's so what's can you give any sort of idea about what's going on in this latest volume of Home for the Holidays from Love and Capes? We have, for people who haven't been around Love and Capes, it is, and I've sold this to you, so I'm going to always continue to do this. Love and Capes is Mad About You with superheroes.
Mhm.
It is this wonderful couple of, one happens to be Superman. He's the Crusader. His name is Mark, and he's a Crusader. But he is the Superman character of the world he lives in. Every world of superheroes has a Superman character.
Mhm.
Some are good, some are not. But it is about the time that he's not saving the world or
Mhm.
getting beaten up or just doing whatever he's doing. It's about their relationship that he has and the world life he has outside of being a superhero. And I say he because I feel bad about it because it's really about Mark and Abby more than it is about Mark.
Oh yeah.
And so it's their life. And there were 4 volumes that you started doing, publishing on the web, and eventually they were released as individuals, and there's 4 collected volumes. And then recently, a couple of years ago, you came out with volume 5, which was a gap had happened, and now
Mhm.
they had 2 children, that and they have a young school age child and a toddler, and it's about being parents and living the world that they do and trying to pay their bills and do the things they do at the same time, knowing that they probably will grow up and have powers, and their father could be destroyed or be at any time. And so it's, yeah, all that and a bag of chips. um But what's going on in this version of Love and Capes and in the world of Mark and Abby?
So this is the holiday story. This is the Christmas story. I've done a couple. I play a little fast and loose with the timeline. Like I don't do a Christmas story every Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Just because one, it gets a little repetitive, and two, I don't want the hard demarcation of time passing. I want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to be a little flexible with that. But I really wanted to do a Christmas story. So the first half of the volume almost takes place just between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
It's like
Um,
Rent.
yeah, it's the kind of thing you can really do in comics, where like you can make 28 pages take 36 hours, and it's also because I've gone to the new like 64 page volume format. It's something I couldn't do when I was doing 22 pages. Like
Right.
I couldn't take the time that I got to take with the Christmas stuff because it would have been more than it. Like Mark, I think this is my record for how long it takes before there's a superhero scene. Like it's like 20 pages before Mark's in costume.
Yes.
He does not appear in costume until he goes to pick up his parents.
Right.
And it feels weird doing that sometimes, but also, it really works for the story. Like if I do it right, you don't notice, but it's there. So it's nice to be
So
able to take the breathing room.
yeah, I full disclosure, let me be honest. I just reread the whole what's currently available today, and as I got to like page 23, which is pretty much the end of the first day,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh, it feels like I finished reading a comic, like a 22 page comic, or it was 23 pages, but
Right.
here and there. I think there's one extra page in there somewhere. But like it felt like that. Is that how you laid it out? Like I know you do a lot of work, and I want listeners and people who are watching this to know that like your design to the things you're writing and the things you're creating is incredibly complicated and pre-done. You are one of the most prepared artists that I'm aware of. So did you plan like that long, or did it get away from you?
I didn't think it was going to be quite that long. but it's not. Essentially, the whole issue is going to take place between Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
So I wanted to focus on that time frame. And when I plot out where I'm going, I always know my ending. Like if I don't have the ending, I don't know what I'm writing for, because it's got to be, especially with Love and Capes, where I did 4 volumes and got where I wanted to. If I come back, the ending has to be worth coming back for.
How far back did you know the ending of Volume 4 of Love and Capes?
I knew it when I started. So I knew it when I started working on issue 2.
Issue 2 of Love and Capes.
Through Love and Capes, because when I did Love and Capes, I said I'm going to do 1 issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if it goes well, maybe I'll do 6. And then after that, the goal was 6 issues every stretch. I knew that the last issue was going to be them having a kid. It was in my head originally. It was dating, married, kid. Except I realized when I started working on their newlywed year that I did not have time for them to have a kid. Like there was too much newlywed stuff to do, and I'd have to force the kid thing into it. So it went from being 3 volumes to 4 volumes. So I try to, like, I have all the high points marked out. I know where things are going, but I also need to leave myself gray areas in the middle where I can expand or contract, or some part of the story will hit that I didn't realize was important. Like when I did the first volume of Love and Capes, Amazonia was never supposed to appear again. She was a one-joke character who was just supposed to show up for that scene, and I didn't think I was going to use her again. And there was such fan reaction to it, and she was such a good character that she just kind of took over and became, like, I don't know how you do that story without her now, but she wasn't that fleshed out when I wrote her. So it's finding those moments, or like Dark Blade and Amazonia. You can find interviews where I said that the 2 of them would never get together, and then they did. And those characters just kind of took over and said, "Nope, this is what's going on."
And how does that work for you? Like, I mean, where do you feel that? Do you feel that when you're writing, when you're planning? Do you feel it? Do you ever feel it when you're drawing?
Usually by the time I'm drawing it, I've already written it, so I feel it mostly when I'm writing. But some of the moments between Amazonia and Darkblade got a lot closer. Like they were bonding over stuff, but it was going differently than I thought. It was hitting a certain level, and like I always intended for the Mark and Abby's wedding to affect Darkblade's relationship. Like something was going to happen. I just didn't know it was going to be serious. Okay. And then it was. So.
How do you find this? How do you find that type of phenomenon of, a story going differently than you intended? It's one thing when it's your created things, but you write for other properties and other things, and you freelance as well. Does that happen there? And what do you do when it does?
Sometimes. I mean, when I'm working on other people's characters, you're playing with other people's toys.
Right.
So you've got to respect the rules that are there. You can't have Twilight Sparkle all of a sudden have a kid or a sibling you didn't know about and completely upset the apple cart. But you can still find moments that are true. Like so My Little Pony, there's a character called Rarity that I always had a hard time writing because she was a seamstress. And it was hard for me to figure out why she was hanging out having adventures with everybody else. Like she just didn't quite fit. She was apparently supposed to be the spirit of creativity, but that was a little harder to get across. But there's a moment with her in Discord, who's like the Q character in My Little Pony, where the 2 of them talk on a level that I didn't realize they were going to have that conversation. And it was just, as I was writing it, it became obvious that this was a true thing. And it was the kind of thing these characters would say. And it allowed me to deepen the story and forward the plot without having to go in a different direction. Like they basically Discord and Pinkie Pie wind up having a fight, like the fight in Sandman, where they keep saying, "I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this." They have a battle of imagination, and she's the character who can come up and say, "You were starting to run out of ideas." Like she was really taking you out of the carpet, and that wasn't in my original script. it just, once it happened, I realized that she was noticing it. Like, that's the character who would see what was going on and be able to crystallize it, which helps explain it to the audience, but also gives you a level where a character can talk to like a godlike being and say stuff that the character didn't know, and it elevates both characters.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Like, it's got to be very rewarding and a little frightening to have the characters tell you what they need,
Yeah, it's great, and it's frustrating, and yeah, you're right, it's a little scary. Like, you need characters to do a thing and they start pushing back, and it doesn't happen all the time. Like, you can hear when the notes are right, but all of a sudden something sounds a little off, or you realize a character would say something differently, and like, that they would say it that way, and you're trying to figure out why it doesn't sound right. It's a thing that bothers me about some modern television. It's as much as I love the Strange New Worlds on Star Trek, the characters are a little too familiar, and like, I see where that becomes an actual problem in the dialogue. But Kirk would always refer to people by their rank or their last name.
Sure.
And Pike starts referring to people by their first name, and it's much more casual, but it doesn't sound right to me for that professional environment.
So, all right. So now we've crossed the bridge, and now we're going to start talking about
what were the chances I was going to bring up?
I don't know. Who knows if we might talk about something like this? But I understand exactly what you're talking about. I think it is the one. I think Chris Pike is very aware that he does it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the character knows what he's doing, and he knows he probably shouldn't, but he believes that is who he wants to be. That he doesn't want his crew. He wants his crew to work, but he does not want to have his crew feel that they don't have a voice, or that because of their rank they are lesser. Even though he knows that it is, even though he knows that this is a ship, and you're right, it feels like it's something that's going to bite him in the ass, because it doesn't sound right, and some, if the writers are smart, they will take advantage of that. Like, that's something that he's set this up.
Yeah,
and it only works if all the people who are contributing to this crew have the same good intentions. And that's just not the case with a crew of thousands.
Right. For me, it's a more meta thing.
Okay.
Like, it feels like I am totally projecting at this point.
Sure.
It feels
that's what we're going to do now.
Yeah. It feels to me as if the writers of the show have not been in a professional chain of command environment. And I can totally buy Pike being more relaxed when he brings people into his quarters, when he makes them food, outside being on the bridge. But I feel like, because you have it with Spock and you have it with Number One, because those are the characters that were introduced before, and they already have a speech pattern that you have to play along with.
Right.
And the place you notice it the most is in the last episode. No real spoilers. Pike has to dress somebody down, and when he does, he had called her by her first name, and he doesn't get to go. If you start in the middle, if you start professional, you can call them lieutenant and really dress them down. You can drop down and call them by their first name, because it was always a big thing in classic Star Trek when Spock would say, "Jim, we have to do that." Like,
right.
When he pulled that card, it was a card he could play.
Right.
You could hit that middle ground just on the bridge scenes, have him be more comfortable everywhere else, and it gives you a note that you can go above and below.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100% on that. I think, and you're right, in that scene, there's a bridge scene in that episode where it's with Ortega's, and there are like, I like that he calls her Erica. Like, I like that, and I like that he calls her Ortega's. But that scene, the way he addressed her, and what happened in that scene, in order to gain the level of gravitas, it would have required a level of animosity or anger or something else that didn't fit right. Like, it would have been, it's easier in a workplace environment to do that, but he's not doing that. And it really is Pike who sets the tone here, because he is the one who uses people's first names all the time, very familiar, very comfortable. But it's him that causes this disconnect with what we're talking about, because he should be at a higher level. And that's how we've grown up in the society that we live in, where you can't be familiar with people at every level, that there's a hierarchy of dealing with different individuals, whether they're familiar or not. And it's not what we've come to expect from the Federation and what we've seen for the past 50 years.
Yeah, I'm not confident that the writers are doing it intentionally. I would like to believe that. And I think there's actually a great scene in The American President, also written by Sorkin, where his best friend, the president's best friend and chief of staff, will not call him by his first name because he's president. He only refers to him as Mr. President. And when he gets to drop the Andy on him, it's a huge thing. And I just think you could write the bridge scenes. I feel like Pike, because it's the bridge and because he knows what he's doing, would be a hair more professional there. He would still be casual. But it's harder to go from super casual to super intense, but he could keep it at casual and then go to intense. Like, he's jumping too many steps. And I think I think it's just a disconnect in terms of the dialogue and in terms of the character. Because I can totally buy that he relaxes after the cage and everything that happens on Discovery, and he's now, a lot of stuff happens to him. He can be a different character, but it just doesn't feel like characters are a little mouthy with him. That I feel like he just commands more respect by being him. That they're saying funny things, but they're not saying the things that characters would say in that situation.
Right.
There I'm bringing problems from reading Peter David novels, where I like Peter David stuff and he's great in a lot of ways, but he also, there is no joke that he will not make. And sometimes it's that you got to kill your darlings thing. Occasionally there's a line where it's like, that's funny. You shouldn't have said it. It's still funny, but you shouldn't have said it.
Yep. We've talked about that. So let's talk about this.
I almost wore that tonight.
I was I kind of had a little hope that you might have worn it. So this was Dragon Con, and
yes,
not to be outdone. Hang on, not to be outdone. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I think I'm going the wrong way. Let's go. Here we go.
Yep.
This was fantastic. Love this.
Thank you.
This is perfect.
It's my actual apron, by the way. It's
what?
It's my actual apron. It's hanging up there in the.
I believe it is.
Yes,
it is. It's wonderful.
It's a stunt spatula, but it's my actual apron.
How is it a stunt spatula?
Because I paid $1 and went to the dollar store and bought a spatula in my suitcase. I didn't want to use a spatula I was carrying around Dragon Con and use it to flip actual food, but
right, sure.
I can wash the apron. So
I mean, well, let's see. We do have comments. They're there. Sherry's says that she loves that picture, and she also mentioned that Captain Pike is her second best captain. But we're not going to discuss that because we have disagreements on the first. So we've nitpicked a little bit, but beyond that, what else are your opinions of the show? I mean, you're
So, I super enjoy it. I've become comfortable with the fact that no modern Star Trek is ever going to hit over 85% with me.
okay.
Because I'm too close to it.
Does the original series hit over 85% all the time? 85% of the time, does it hit over 85%?
Yes.
Okay.
To go completely on brand, the original series has a virtue of never having been tried.
Sure. That's true.
There's episodes that don't work, but they're like it figures out its own consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like as a writer, Next Generation was the show that made me think I could write Star Trek because I always felt like Star Trek it worked so well. Like the story was up till Star Trek V that Paramount wouldn't even do like test screenings. They're like, we don't know why it works. It just does. And that you get Star Trek 4 and it's just kind of magical. And Next Generation was so rocky in its first season that I'm like, oh, I can do that. It kind of lowered the bar enough that I felt like I could like it. It took the shine away, so I thought it was something I could do. But everyone was internally consistent up till Voyager Enterprise. But now, especially when they do prequel stuff, like I have opinions about that in a way that I have less opinions about what they do with Picard than I do about prequel stuff because they're, Strange New Worlds is pretty much the Star Trek show that I've been waiting for. Like I wanted to see a show that was just Star Trek, and like with Star Trek plots where you go to a planet and have an adventure, and like I like long form storytelling. I like the first season of Picard quite a bit. Second season made me dumber as I watched it. I have great hopes for the third season.
Okay.
But Star Trek gets to be so broad that it can be so many different things. But when it gets to particular choices, I know that I have opinions to the point that like they're going to make choices I don't agree with. But if you can hit that 85% mark, that's almost like close enough.
Sure, that's
like,
good. That's
everything I want. It just has to be close enough and respectful enough to the thing I think you're trying to do that it's worth doing.
I think they're trying to do that. I think they are. I think. I mean, Strange New Worlds is the reason that I broke down and paid for Paramount Plus. And for the audience, the event was I had I think the first 2 episodes, maybe the first 3 episodes were out, and I'd spent the weekend sitting next to Mike Gold at a con, and he was like leaning over, telling me that Strange New Worlds is so good. He put it in some eloquent way that I absolutely cannot about how good it was, and so I went home and I'm like sitting home like and I saw a couple of other people who had posted about it. I'm like, all right, I think I want to watch this. It sounds interesting. So I watched the first episode, and then like the next day, like Matt Dow Smith like posted something, and we got in there, and I watched the episode, and I went and I told my wife, and I said, I watched this episode, and it was really cool, and there's all these things, and this is what happened, and she's like, I like Star Trek. Why can't we watch that? And it's like the first time, in our situation where we watched it together all the time, and we were able to watch on time, because there's an episode of Love and Capes, Home for the Holidays, where you discuss the modern viewing of the suburban American household.
Mm-hmm.
That is difficult when one of the couple wants to watch one thing, or somebody wants to watch the other thing, but they want to watch it together, and we struggle with that. But like this show, we made the time and we were on time with it, and it was, I'll give it 90%. It wasn't, there are issues. It is but the acting was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The characters are compelling and except for one, but it's just it's funny because one of the things about this show for me was that this was it's about a month ago or so. I was talking to my father and I was telling him, that I was watching this show on Paramount Plus, and I think he was getting a new TV or something. That's what it was. He was getting a new TV, so he of course called me and said, "Hey, which TV should I get? And if if it has these apps on the TV, does that mean I get those things?" I'm like, "No, you don't. You still have to pay for the content, but you can, and you should get Paramount Plus." He's like, "Oh yeah, we've been talking about getting that because somebody wanted them to watch Yellowstone, which I could care less about." But I said, "Well, you should get it, but you should watch Strange New Worlds." And I realized at that moment that the reason that I love Star Trek is because I used to watch Star Trek with my dad, and that he loved Star Trek. And I'm like, this is the show you would watch. Like if there's ever a sci-fi, anything that my father would watch, because he doesn't, this is the thing he should watch. Like that's what I think about the show.
Yeah, my dad, my uncle loved it, and it's part of how I got into it. It was just always on. Like, it was on Saturdays and Sundays at 6:00, and it was just like it was comfort. And I agree with you about the characters. There's probably another one or two I might put on the chopping block. Like I just don't think they've hit their. They made a couple things a little too complicated.
Sure.
But Star Trek Classic and Next Gen and Strange New Worlds had the greatest premise. Like you can exhaust the writers before you exhaust that premise.
Sure.
Or Strange New Worlds. That's everything. There's so much you can do with it. You can do morality plays. You can do action. You can do comedy. And I love that Strange New Worlds did all those things in the first season to kind of say, yes, we can do all the stuff. I wish the season had been more than just the 10 episodes, but it shows that they've got the range of the old show, which is good. Next Gen, it took a while before they did it in comedy, and they never did it quite the same. Like Next Gen took itself seriously to a degree that classic Star Trek could let loose every once in a while. I think that's just modern storytelling too. And
the thing about the original series and the comedy that's there is that, and as you compare it to comedy today, is that we are alerted that there's going to be comedy. Be prepared. Here it comes. And I'm not saying it does that. I'm not saying that takes away from the jokes or the comedy or whatever it is. But with the original series, it was just here's the joke. I didn't warn you. Get deal with it.
Yeah, and the characters, Spock did, but that was part of why it was funny. But nobody else took themselves. They could all take themselves lightly, in a way that by the time of Next Gen, everything was a little more important. Like Star Trek knew how important it was, and it took a while before it was able to loosen up and be able to make fun of itself. I think Deep Space Nine did a much better job with that.
Sure.
When they did their comedy episodes, I thought they were genuinely funny. But it's just it's harder to get there now. I really liked it because it's the Star Trek I want to see. So I've been really happy with it. And I think like being a writer, you always see the superstructure. So there's always stuff where it's like, oh, if you'd done this one thing a little differently, or handled this differently, and I don't think so. I used to work at an amusement park and I did caricatures, and I realized that I was doing it too long when I was sitting in a movie theater breaking down the actors' faces into caricatures as I was watching them. And the same thing kind of happens when you're a writer, where you just can't I would love to be able to turn it off. It's why movies that genuinely surprise me are few and far between, because the form, oh, that thing is important and it's going to come back. I fully admit that part of the reason I love How I Met Your Mother is I figured out the ending a year and a half, 2 years before. And I remember telling people, I'm like, I think I know what's going to happen. I'll tell you, but if I tell you, you can't watch the show the same way. It's going to change your view. And I don't want to do that without your permission. but if you want to know, I'll tell you the thing. And I remember showing my friend the episode and going, this is what it means. And he goes, oh, you're right. And then everything after that just, it's just more tumblers dropping. So I also enjoy being able to figure out what's being laid down in a satisfying manner. Like I can appreciate the watch working.
Right. Sure.
But then there'll be something like, there's a movie called Digstown with James Woods and Lou Gossett Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the advertising campaign for it was, you will not see the ending coming. I'm like, yeah, but I've been watching Law and Order for years now, and I've seen all those surprise endings. Like, if you know there's a surprise ending, you're waiting for it. And that one hit, and I'm like, whoa, I did not see that coming. So I appreciate when someone's able to pull that off or do something clever or a spin or just, do something a little more in depth in a way that, I hadn't expected.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I do it the same way. As a reader, when you, and I'm not writing the stories, but I'm reading stories, critically in terms of, seeing what the creators are trying to do and how they're doing it, whether it's in comic form or television or whatever, and being able to appreciate, yes, I see how you did this. I see where you were going, and you got to where you were going, and it was successful. And that means a lot. That means they've done what they're doing. The fact that I saw it, does that mean that everyone saw it? Maybe, probably, not necessarily. When someone, really brings me in and I don't pay attention to the scaffolding, that means a lot. And so with this show, there are times when I feel that way. There's also, then there are times when I'm like, oh, okay, I see where we're going with this, and but there were parts of it that were really fantastic. Especially the last episode. And the last episode is everybody should watch this show. But like the last episode, there are like, we knew what was happening. And that's one of the things, like, you mentioned that it's a prequel. So like we know there's 7 in the show, 7 years from where they are. We know something big happens. And we know what's happened because they've stayed true to the history. So they're like, we're going to put this in the past, but everything that we know happens. What that last episode, I thought they were going a certain way, and they went a different way. And I appreciated that. I appreciated what they did there. First of all, I think that it makes the story better, but I appreciated that they outfoxed me a little bit with that one. Let's move away from the deep space and come back to some Cupid's arrows. So you have some stretch goals, and you've done great in terms of getting this funded and where it is. But the first stretch goal is bookmarks, which everyone's going to get. I'm going to bring it in into the stream. So these bookmarks, which are totally cool, are part of it. But I want to know more about what this next goal is. And we need to get there because you got 7 days, and we got a couple $1,000. It's reachable. This is a reachable goal.
2,000.
What is this? Enhanced books?
Oh yeah, it's an extra coating, extra scratch matte finish, and UV coating on it, especially for the hardcovers. It's going to make them even more beautiful.
How is that compared to what the first volume was in those hardcovers? Is that the cover? Is that what we had there, or is it even more than that?
I think it's more than that.
Really? Because like I said, it's a great book, and it's such a nice piece to put on your bookshelf.
The first one had a high gloss. I don't think it had the UV coat.
Okay. So, and that's one of the cool things about Kickstarter is that you have the ability to say, hey, this is what I was going to do, but if everybody contributes or we get a little bit more, then we can make it even better. And that's one of like stretch goals are, some people come out, and they're just like stretch goals are gonna like out the wazoo, and they're ridiculous. And I know that you're smart about it because they can cost the creators a lot more, and it makes it difficult for the product to get out in a proper way. And but this looks fun, and this is something we can really enhance the product that's coming out. And as I said, we have 7 days, is that right?
In 7 days.
It ends on September 29th, next Thursday. At 1. Now let's jump into one other thing. So we know that you're doing this Kickstarter, and we know that you're also working on Love and Capes. Where are you going to be next Thursday?
Next Thursday I will be in Paris.
Okay. And why is that?
So I am doing My Little Pony convention in Holland.
That's fantastic.
Michigan. Yeah. And then my schedule changed in a way that I didn't expect, and I'm now able to go out sooner. So Friday, I'm flying out to London.
Excellent.
I'm going to do a couple days in London, and do a couple days in Paris, a couple days in Amsterdam.
Nice.
Do the pony convention in Zeist,
which
is only unfortunately named because I like Highlander. And then a couple days, or like a day and a half in Bruges.
Nice. Very nice.
So yeah, it's my first time being in Europe in 20 years, and I've only been to Ireland before. I've still got relatives over there, so I went over for a week and a half in like 2001.
So you've been to Ireland?
Been to Ireland, but I haven't been anywhere else. So like European vacation.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And then following that, what's the name of the show though?
PonyCon Holland.
PonyCon Holland. You will be there the weekend. It's next weekend, right? Is that right?
Next weekend, yeah. So this weekend I'm essentially on vacation. Next weekend I'll be in Holland, and then I leave.
And then you come.
I leave on Tuesday. I think I get in Tuesday night, and then Wednesday I'll drive to New York for New York Comic Con.
Right. Well, that's fun.
I won't know what time of day. I won't.
Okay.
I'll be unstuck in time.
And so then New York Comic Con, you will be there at, I think it's A4. Is that right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
I think it's about in Artist Alley.
Yeah.
And
3 or A4, right next to Andy Price.
Okay. Yeah, maybe say 3. So you'll be at New York Comic Con for 4 days. Following that, do you have anything between then and Baltimore Comic Con?
No.
Okay, great. So then
work.
What?
I said hopefully doing work.
Hopefully doing work, because there's a lot to get done. Yeah. And then you'll be at Baltimore Comic Con at the end of the month, which is at the end of October, which is Halloween weekend, and I will be there as well. It's
where the Ringos are.
The Ringos are there. Hopefully, I'll be able to get to go to that and see you win your award. And
I just want to win for my mom. I honestly do. I just want her to see me win an award. I really do.
I'd like to see you win an award because you deserve it, because you do. So I appreciate that. And then how's the rest of your year working out? So
I think I have a week off, and then Grand Rapids Comic Con closes out my year.
Okay.
My con year. That's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's in November, second week in November. And then I'm off until like March or April, I think. That sounds right. I've got a convention that hasn't been announced yet. I don't want to get in front of, but it'll take me out to the West Coast. Which is nice, and then kind of going from there. I keep wanting to slow down the number of shows I do.
Yeah, you said that last year.
Yeah, and you see how great I'm doing.
Well, I was right with you. So
yes. So I want to do like one a month, and then I know that San Diego is going to be like in the summer you're going to have a couple weeks that are back to back, and then you've always got that stretch of Dragon Con, New York, and Baltimore that wind up being clumping together.
Well, they're fine as long as you don't add 3 things in the middle of that.
Yes, yeah, and then like you get stuff like I got to do Wait a minute. I don't want to say it now because I don't want to ruin it. But you get stuff like Ponycon Holland, where it's like, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to say no to a trip to Holland. Like, that's awesome. So you get these opportunities that you don't have to take, but like you want to take them because like you're not going to have those opportunities all the time, and you want to strike while the iron's hot. But it's still like it doesn't. The fact that it's the right thing to do doesn't give you extra hours of sleep.
Right. Sure. Well, I want to come back to the fact that part of why we're here, part of why we want to do this is that there is a book to be made, and we need to do that. We need to get you the ability to make and finish Love and Capes Home for the Holidays, so we can get that out. And we appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on and talking to us and sharing your trips, tips and tricks and chatting about Star Trek and all the rest of it. And we will see you soon. And thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Is there anything else you wanted to tell the audience while we're here?
Thank you for reading my stuff. I love that this is my life. I'm very blessed and grateful to have it. Support the Kickstarter. It'll be Love and Capes Kickstarter will hit near the end of the year because part of the plan is to make sure that I get a book out every year so that I qualify for whatever awards so I'm always in the mix. That's the big stuff. That's what I can think of. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And hopefully everybody will go out and back the Kickstarter.
Thank you.
Bye.
Sounds good. All right. Bye.